that the king owed Penn's father a debt of gratitude and a debt of money, and he tried to make good on that debt with this proprietary grant to Penn, a leader within the Quaker movement in England. Dear Samantha, were Quakers well thought of in England? They were not well thought of. They were considered to be Christianity gone mad. He wants you to give him 5, you have to. That's okay, it's just important, right? They were considered Christianity gone mad. They were considered to have some ideas that had extended Christianity to the point where it was considered to be sort of dangerous. They refused to swear oaths. They refused to serve in the military. They wouldn't respect traditional notions of deference. So the Quakers were a persecuted minority, and Penn's intention was to create a haven for persecuted Quakers, but also persecuted people in general. What significant group of people migrated to Penn's colony, originally called Penn's Woods or Pennsylvania, besides persecuted Quakers? Anyone remember, besides the instructor, what minority, non-British minority group came to Pennsylvania? Yes? German Protestants, who we call the Pennsylvania Dutch, right? The Pennsylvania Dutch. Do you think there are people on the internet that are going to watch this think to themselves, I can't believe those people don't know. Don't they live in Pennsylvania? Don't they go to Lancaster? How do they not know the Pennsylvania Dutch, who were in fact Germans? Now, Delaware was simply an extension from Pennsylvania, an attempt for Penn to get access to the sea in the port of Philadelphia. Pennsylvania's significance might have been in that Pennsylvania was maybe arguably the most liberal, right, of the colonial holdings in terms of the government of the colony. Now, based on our understanding of the traditional definitions of liberal, what does that mean? If we say the government was the most liberal, right, based on the traditional definition, what would that mean? Well, this is an outstanding question. Who do you think? Jason H. You would like to respond. Jason? Well, yeah, we give the people, maybe more say-so, more egalitarian, and I think less oppressive. Go ahead, Berhani. It may encourage reform, but I think, fundamentally, there were fewer restrictions on the people in Pennsylvania. I think one of the examples, there were fewer things that you could be sentenced to death for. The General Assembly had more latitude, less governmental oppression than any of the other colonies, hence a more liberal government. Which also, remember, the liberality spread into the size and the quality of the land grants that Penn offered for people who came there. I mean, land was relatively inexpensive and of high quality in Pennsylvania. Penn advertised his colony throughout Europe and welcomed people of different religion and ethnic persuasions, religious denominations could come to Pennsylvania. And so what grew was a prosperous, diverse colony in Pennsylvania. Now, with Pennsylvania, basically we have all of the colonial holdings with Plymouth and without Georgia, which we'll bring into the picture in a moment. Now, we would divide colonial America into New England, the middle colonies, and the southern colonies. In New England, you had, Massachusetts Bay, you had Connecticut, you had New Hampshire, you had Rhode Island, and you had Plymouth. In the middle, you had New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. In the south, you had Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, and eventually, in the 18th century, Georgia. Now, if we were to identify characteristics of each region, now I should probably tell you this. Will there be questions on the Advanced Placement United States History Test about colonial America? Undoubtedly. What the AP does with it, I just tell you this now, and I'll repeat it at other venues. What the AP does with their essay questions is they move through history. So there's 5 total questions. Right? 1 document-based, 4 free response. Everybody does the document-based. You choose 2 of the 4 free response. And we'll talk more about that. But they're going to go in kind of a historical order. So one question is going to be about the colonial period through kind of probably up to maybe past the Revolution, maybe into the constitutional or the critical period. So one question is going to come out of this time period. It might be in colonization, it might be in the American Revolution, it might be on the Constitution, it could be on any element of that, right? Then there'll be a question that will be kind of in the antebellum period, the period from, you know, the War of 1812 up through the Civil War and including the Civil War. And then there'll be a question after the Civil War, right, up to the, you know, the kind of the Gilded Age era, maybe through the Progressive era, then a question up through World War II, and then a question after World War II. So then you're going to have 5 questions, right? You know, so, you know, what is it going to be in this time? Well, I don't know. I mean, there's any number of questions that they've asked out of this time period. You responded to one of them when you responded to the Revolutionary era. So, you know, I mean, and there'll be multiple choice questions that come out of the time period as well. So, I mean, it's helpful to study this. You know, certainly it's helpful to study this time period. A lot of people skip it. A lot of teachers will say, "Wow, you know, just read chapters 1 through 4 in your text, and we'll take a test on that, you know, the second day of class, and everybody study it on their own. We'll just start with the French and Indian War." And you know, that's how they're kind of up to and through, you know, World War II now, and all the way up through other things, because they kind of skip it. But you never really know what's necessarily going to be asked on the test. And so, anyways, I mean, that maybe hopefully gives you some idea of, you know, what we're up with here. But thinking about that, what can we identify as a characteristic about any life, economy, religion, demographics, social stratification, about any of the 3 areas? Pick anything. What do you know? Well, go ahead, Jason H.U. Pardon me? Yeah. So in the North, people were more likely to live longer, healthier lives, right? As opposed to the Southern. Why was that the case? Yes, there was less disease, you know, because of the climate, right? I think is one of the reasons. I think another reason, besides the climate and, you know, the mosquitoes and the nature of the water that, you know, was being drunk there, is that, you know, the people that went to New England went there in families. You know, they had, you know, more intentions of sort of staying there, more focused on building lives there, whereas many of the people that went to the southern colonies went there for economic reasons, weren't necessarily intending on staying there, you know, and so they didn't attempt to build lives, you know, necessarily, and that may have resulted in some level of ill health. Do you remember anything else? Go ahead, Cornell. Yes, absolutely, positively something to remember. The middle colonies had the greatest ethnic diversity. In terms of that ethnicity, obviously British North America was settled by subjects of England, the English. Besides the English, who else came to British North America? And, you know, up to half the population of Pennsylvania were non-English. Who else besides the actual English came in this sort of movement of migration? Give me the other ethnicities. Pick one. I'll put this finger up and you say one. Richards, go ahead, pick one. Well, yes, to a limited extent the Dutch came. But if we said the Pennsylvania Dutch, what, Shalani, ethnicity would that be? The Pennsylvania Dutch? The Germans, right? German Protestants. And the Germans were a significant group of immigrants that came to colonial America, mainly the middle colonies, not exclusively the middle colonies. They were not the largest group of non-English Europeans. The largest group of non-English Europeans that came to colonial North America was who? Do you remember they came to? Yes, go ahead. Not the actual Irish, but the Scots-Irish, right? The Scots-Irish, who are not really Irish. They are Scots. They were Scottish Protestants that had been brought to Ireland and eventually left there. Do you remember anything about the Scots-Irish? They had a characteristic, something that was distinctive. They made up 7 to 8% of colonial America, and they were distinctive in that they did what? When they came to America, where did they go? Do you remember? This is maybe significant. Kendrick, do you remember? Well, yes, they went to the frontier.